Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Across the 616 podcast. We are very, very lucky today to have a couple of esteemed guests with us from within the Marvel Champions community. We've got Bob and Scott from the Card Text. How are we today, gentlemen?
Not bad.
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing okay. How are you?
Yeah, very, very good. Weather's not bad over here at the moment, so yeah, can't really complain. So obviously a lot of the listeners are going to be familiar with you guys through your presence around the community, especially within the Marvel Champions Discord and from the Card Text itself. Just for those who aren't familiar with you both, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Scott, you want to go first?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. So I'm Scott Hill. I generally use that name or Scorpion0x17 on Discord and Facebook and various places. I also run a small, occasional YouTube channel, Scott Plays, and obviously I'm one of the hosts of the Card Text.
And I'm known on the Discord as Apotropaic, or also as Bob. I think Marvel Champions is probably the first game I really got into pretty heavily. Before that, I only ever played Arkham. And I'm also one of the hosts of the Card Text, along with Theorel and Scott here.
Okay, so just in regards to the Card Text, how did that podcast end up coming about? Did one of you approach the other, or was there a tell us about how that came to be?
So as you said, we're pretty active in the Discord and answering rules questions and asking a lot of rules questions as well. And I think the three of us that seemed the most active were Theorel, Scott, and myself. There's a few others that are also pretty good about answering those questions quickly, but I think someone actually suggested it. I can't remember if it was Kennedy Hawk or a few others that said, yeah, we should start a podcast so that they can hear our discussions, over audio instead of reading them in the Discord, I guess. But that's kind of how it started, and then it was actually able to happen because Marvel Champions Monthly, Kennedy Hawk himself, was gracious enough to let us appear in like mini episodes on his podcast and in long form as well on his website.
I think it was either Mag or Kennedy Hawk that suggested it.
Mm-hmm. Mag of Hall of Heroes, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how has the response been to the Card Text so far? How's the feedback been?
It's been fine. We do not get a whole lot of questions. I kind of am looking for more feedback on. We get some in our channel that's in the Marvel Champions Monthly Discord. There's a lot of people that make a lot of suggestions there, but I think I am really looking for feedback on our approach. Is it helpful? Do we answer questions in a way that is digestible for everybody? Because I try to do that, and I think we try to do that as well.
Yeah, I've had a couple of comments on Facebook and Discord, people saying they appreciate what we do. But yeah, we don't get a huge amount of feedback.
I guess positive feedback, you're always far more likely with anything to get negative feedback. Like with positive feedback, oftentimes people have their problem solved and they're off to do what they were going to do otherwise. So the fact that you're not getting a lot of, I'd be kind of more happy about, personally, I'd be a bit more stoked about the fact that you're not getting a lot of negative feedback, which means that people are likely understanding and able to digest and kind of being able to go about and continue on with their game. So I know Bob mentioned that you've only, apart from Champions, you've only previously gotten into Arkham. Is there a background in in board games or anything else for either of you that has kind of led you to be pretty good at getting inside the mindset of the developers when it comes to how cards are intended to play and how rules for the game should go where there's not that clarity?
For me, I'm actually relatively new to gaming in this way, like tabletop games, card games, things like that. So I would think that the benefit of that is just kind of having more of a perspective of the newer player that hasn't played things like Magic the Gathering for a long time and hasn't had those habits or that experience, I guess, influence the way they see this particular game. But otherwise, I just became, like, I guess, infatuated with keeping tabs on responses that guys like Boggs and Caleb would give in regard to the rules of the game. And I just paid attention a lot and tried to answer questions that people had that I knew had been answered by the developers in, like, interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's quite helpful, both on the Discord and within our podcast, because I do have a long background in gaming. I was playing Magic in the 90s, and I have a not big board game collection, but it's not small. I play all sorts of games. I've played numerous card games. So just through exposure to different types of games, I've picked up a sort of understanding of the way that games tend to work. Bob tends to ask really interesting questions, shall we say.
Thanks, Scott.
I can't remember what Theorel's background in gaming is, but I think he's sort of somewhere between the two of us, isn't he, Bob?
Yeah, I think he has much more. I think both of you have much more experience gaming than I do. And Theorel, I remember him saying he played a lot of Star Wars. Was it Star Wars Destiny? With his brother?
Yes, I think that's right. I also do little bits of game design and play testing, and I think that helps a lot.
I have dabbled in custom content for Marvel Champions specifically, so I do I guess what you would call some kind of analysis on like the heroes, their abilities, and all that.
Cool. So yeah, I think for yourself, Bob, I think there's definitely some value in not having that baggage that kind of comes with the Magic the Gathering side of things. I think for a lot of card gamers, myself included, there's definitely that tendency to fall back on the way Magic the Gathering does things in terms of the way cards should work and feel. So yeah, it's good to hear that you guys are attacking it with differing levels of backgrounds, and you're kind of covering that gamut from, quite new to card games to, veteran status, basically. Having said that, and obviously particularly in regards to yourself, Scott, how have you found Marvel Champions compares to other games in terms of rules, clarity, and complexity?
That's a subject. It's not bad. I mean, there are certainly games that I know of that have much worse rules, and there are games that I know of that have much better rules. It's towards the better end of the scale. I think. I mean, we've discussed this a bit on our podcast. I think that FFG were trying to produce a more streamlined rule set, and because of that, there are issues with the rules as they stand at the moment. But I don't think any of it is stuff that can't be relatively easily fixed.
So this is a question for both of you. How would you both kind of look to go about offering guidance to a player on how to resolve a rules conflict where there's no RRG clarification, or it's a bit foggy and we are awaiting a response back from one of the designers? Is there kind of like a go-to line of thinking that you guys have for resolving those kind of things?
I think what we try to do is just make it clear if something is unclear, like a keyword or an ability. We give information that we have, what we know. We try and relay that, and usually what happens is it either falls one way or another way. Like, for example, piercing is kind of unclear about whether you actually get to remove a tuft when something is attacked with piercing. So it's unclear if you can remove it, whether or not there's damage. Is that right, Scott? I think.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's unclear about piercing. There's also the question of when it actually triggers, and because that interacts with things like boost effects, and it kind of depends on what the person asking the question is seeking. If they want rules clarity, then it's, as Bob said, we will try and explain things to the best of our ability. And certainly myself, if I don't know or I'm not sure what the answer is, I will say I don't know what the answer is. If there are sort of two different interpretations that are commonly held within the community, I will present both those interpretations. And yet often you end up having to say, we don't know, choose one of the things, play it like that until we get an answer, because some things just can't be resolved. And we have long arguments on the Discord about those things. But the other thing that sometimes crops up is somebody that is in the middle of a game and they want an answer to something. And I think in that case, if you know what the answer is, you just give the answer, get them moving. If you don't, then my advice to all players is to just use the Grim rule. And that is the situation that the Grim rule is intended for. It's not meant to answer rules debates. It's just, if you're in the middle of the game and you can't find an answer to a question, you just Grim rule it, which means doing whatever is worse for the players and just carry on. And because generally, if you do that, the game will not break. And so that's kind of the two situations that I think we tend to come across. Either somebody's in the middle of a game, or they just have a question about card interactions and they're looking for an answer, a correct answer, which we're not always able to give.
How have you guys found the developers in terms of answering rules issues? Are you happy with the level of detail they provide and the kind of turnaround of how quickly they answer questions?
Lately, we haven't been getting a whole lot of rules answers or responses, but Caleb has been very active about answering a bunch of rules questions. We have tons of responses from him and responses on interviews that both him and Boggs have done. So we have a lot of information on how a number of things work, a lot of clarifications, things like that. Sometimes, occasionally, I don't know how often Scott feels this happens, but sometimes Caleb will give rules responses that are somewhat unclear, which is fine because it's just a quick email responding to whatever question it is. You don't have to be too detailed. You want more specific rulings to actually be in the RRG. But sometimes he can give a ruling and then take it back quickly. I think that's only happened maybe 3 times. I haven't counted, but it can happen sometimes.
Yeah, or sometimes the rulings are unclear to the point where they raise like half a dozen more questions. But again, that also doesn't happen often. They're pretty good, both Caleb and Boggs.
But what would you guys feel are the biggest issues in the game currently that, cause the most kind of issues when it comes to rules, clarity, and complexity? Are there any that stand out other than piercing?
There's three things that I thought about. First is having to read multiple entries in order to understand something that, at least in some cases, can be explained like in a bullet point. The second thing is not having help text on keywords for more than one printing, I think, is detrimental. And the last thing, I think, is just unwillingness to have like a completely fleshed out rule book, kind of like more like an Arkham Horror rule book. And I think they streamlined the rules, but I feel like most people don't dive deeply into the rules. I think they read them and take them in as much as they can, but I don't think the rules needed to be simplified. Only the game text and the card text and the learn the playbook, I think it's fine simplifying that, but I think they could have gone a little deeper on the RRG than they did.
Do you feel part of that is because there have been the clarity issues in regards to the rules have sprung up as a result of the heroes following on from the core set or the content after the core set? Or do you feel that the RRG didn't even kind of really do the core set justice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could have just been expounded upon a lot more than it was. I think they simplified a lot of entries just to make it easily digestible, and that they could have probably put more timing aspects in there, just so that we could work out those trickier interactions.
Yeah, something I've been saying right from the start, the launch of the game, is we need timing charts. And I think an example of the kind of thing Bob is talking about is things like and the defense rules changes and the lack of clarity around the attack, both player attacks and enemy attacks, and the sequence of things that happen and how things can react to those things happening and what the timing and priorities are within that. And we're sort of piecing a picture together of how that works from various rulings, but it would have been nice to have that broken down in the RRG from the beginning.
Are there any particular areas or any particular rulings that you feel that the game would be better off without having been made by the developers, or is there anything you'd scrap?
Anything you'd scrap? No. I mean, I don't know what I would rework or scrap. I know that a lot of people consider the defense rework horrible and terrible and should never have been done. And I don't really agree with that, which is really funny because when that happened, I was probably one of the people that whined the loudest when it happened. And then everything just changed like a few months after. And they were like, yeah, you know what? It's fine.
I would change the defense ruling. It's the fact that it's inconsistent. Yeah, you've got attack and thwart designated actions that both work in very similar ways. And then there's the defense designated actions, which look like they should work the same way as attack and thwart ones, but it works completely differently. And it's that inconsistency that I don't like about it. I think what it does for the game is fine. Yeah, I mean, there are things that I think it nerfed a couple of cards that really didn't need nerfing, but those are fairly minor things. And yeah, I would prefer that those types of rules all work in basically the same way, even if there are subtle differences.
Yeah, I'm definitely someone who falls into the latter camp. I think that the fact that defense events don't count as defending, that seems super counterintuitive to me. But I just think for most players, they're going to see defense card and they're going to treat it as if it's the same as the way an attack works. It just seems odd for them for the things not to work practically identically, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I read all three of at the time that it was changed, I read all three of the entries for attack, thwart, defense. And if you go back in the rules, if you have, I guess, the first printing of the rule book, you can see that they're all identical. They're all three of them. It's as if they took the entry for one and just copied and pasted it over the other two. And I wonder if that means that, I wonder what that means. Because I wonder if it means that they really didn't think through how defense worked, or if they did, they just thought it through for maybe not very long. Because I think the change had something to do with preemptive strike and the ability for a player to defend, to become the target of an attack when another player is being attacked via a card. And they never fully explained exactly what the problem was. And I think some people think it was not that big of a problem. I would just love for them to go in depth over what the problem was and why it was so problematic that they did have to change it.
Yeah, I think one of the other things is, especially in the instance I mentioned, which is where playing backflip on Spider-Man doesn't actually count as a defense. Like, even flavor-wise, it feels like, well, hang on, he's defending against an attack by, using his agility to backflip out of the way of a would-be strike or punch or whatever. So there's kind of also that aspect of it too, that kind of like this feels like it should be considered a defensive action that the character's taking that's relevant to that character. So I think that it doesn't help in that matter either.
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say. I think that's the biggest drawback of the change is the loss of that interaction. Because you can get interactions like that with thwart and attack sometimes, but defense is lacking that interaction. There's no interaction for defending except with some cards like maybe what is it, unflappable. You defend, you get something. But the defense tag, when you play a defense card, no longer counts as defending for those interactions. So, and it does take away from protection as an aspect. And that was one of the things that I think bothered me so much when it did happen. But afterward, it felt like the cards were still playable in cases where it was helpful. And it didn't seem like the loss of that interaction was still a big deal, but you could still play the cards in cases where it was helpful, so they were still usable.
Yeah, you mentioned that kind of unfortunate kind of almost slight nerfing to protection. Would you both agree with me in what I'm saying, that in this game, defending just doesn't feel as good as thwarting or attacking? Do you guys think that they should be trying to make the act of defending feel a bit more exciting and a bit more flavorful?
I do, yeah. I think particularly defending for other players. Like one of the cards that did really get badly nerfed by the change was Warning, and it's essentially an unplayable card now. My background isn't very much in the comics. I'm more of the movies person. But yeah, I think in the stories that the game is based on in general, you have plenty of examples of heroes helping other heroes out in a way. And that aspect of the game, although there are cards that sort of give you that a little bit, it is mostly missing. Whereas before they made that change, it was definitely there. You could essentially pull a villain away from your teammate by playing a card that did something useful. And yeah, that now isn't there. You have to literally put one of your characters, either your allies or your hero, in the way of the thing, and there's some subtlety lost in the game, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should incentivize something like that. I don't know how they would go about doing it, specifically because, like Scott said, was it warning would have let you, under the old rules, redirect the target of the attack from your partner, your sidekick or whatever, as well as preemptive strike. Both of those cards are cards that they felt they had to change because it had that effect. It let you redirect the attack just by playing that card. And yeah, defense definitely is missing something like that. And yeah, I don't know how they work around that area that they feel players should not be going into.
Was preemptive strike, was that actually problematic? Was that line of play problematic in your opinion? Was there a reason for them to go down this path, or?
Scott, do you want to? I have my opinion on that. Scott might have a different opinion.
I don't think it was really. Some people sort of come at it from the thematic point of view and say it doesn't really fit what the card is doing to be able to use it to defend for another player. I don't really think that's that big an issue. Yeah, I didn't really. I mean, there are issues with it, but I don't think they're major issues.
Yeah. So I'm of the opinion that if you play preemptive strike under the old rules, say Scott was being attacked, and I play preemptive strike, so now I'm being attacked, and I don't know for certain because they haven't said exactly what the problem was. I think that the problem is how far does that count as an attack for the player that played preemptive strike? What interactions does that player now drag onto them as part of resolving the attack? I think that was the issue, is it just wasn't clear what it really meant to be playing a defense card and now you're the target of the attack, in terms of all the interactions that come along with becoming the target of an attack.
Yeah, I think for me, without having played too many of those, the offending cards, I'm still of the mindset that having a player step in and having a hero step in and defend another hero is quite heroic. I mean, it's a bit of a trope in the Superman series where kind of, someone's about to get struck down and he kind of like flashes in and he's, stops the axe from coming down on the poor damsel in distress or whatever. Or, steps in to take the bullets on the chest that were about to cut down someone. So there's that kind of aspect of things. And if you do have a look at, obviously, a lot of the attack cards and a lot of the defense cards, they do really seem like those attack and defense events are really just kind of extra special skills over and above kind of punching or striking or foiling a villain's plans. They're kind of like punching with some added style to them almost. So although it hasn't affected me too much, I'm really not a big fan of the way that the defense ruling has changed, to be honest, and I hope that they kind of backtrack on that. I'd actually prefer to see them either backtrack or come up with something that kind of maintains the original intent and not has the effect of rendering a printed card that essentially we've paid for in the cost of products useless. So that one's going to be definitely an interesting thing to keep our eyes on going forward as to how that situation pans out. Are there any particular suggestions or ideas or systems you have for FFG and the developers in terms of how it can help streamline the rules going forward and help stop issues we have, such as the defense ruling and things like piercing? Is there better lines of communication or better means of communication you think they can take, more player-based playtesting, you reckon?
Well, I mean, communicating rules is always hard. There's always going to be somebody that interprets it differently, even if it's like the most clearly written sentence. You're going to have at least one or two people that are like, no, I don't know, it could mean something else. That said, I will say that the rules definitely could be communicated more clearly, and the rule books could be organized much better. I also think, I don't know this for certain, but from what we've heard from Caleb, it sounds like they have a third party writing the rule books, and that probably isn't helping. So if they could, I don't know, take more time to write the rules a little more carefully, I think that would definitely help. I think we've kind of lost hope on we hope they format everything consistently. I don't think anybody's holding out any hope about that happening. But how about you, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about how to to word this most diplomatically. I think it's important to sort of stress that overall they are doing a pretty good job. I think there are things that we as players are not aware of that are impacting the design and development team's ability to do the best job that they can. Because you look at their other games, particularly, say, the Arkham Horror LCG, and whilst that one does still produce lots of rules questions, their FAQ is updated very frequently. It's been a while since I've actually submitted questions about the Arkham LCG, but when we were getting answers pretty quickly. The card text is generally pretty well formatted and consistently formatted. Typos are a rarity. And so that shows that there is the ability within the company to do what we all want them to do with Marvel Champions, but there's clearly something that is getting in the way, and it's probably multiple somethings. Yeah, whether they're under time constraints or budgetary constraints or possibly even just manpower constraints, it's not clear. But there's definitely something there that's causing problems.
Do you feel the pandemic may have had anything to do with it, or just
it certainly hasn't helped? Yeah, it definitely hasn't helped. But it was a problem before this year.
Whatever the issue was, it probably exacerbated it to some degree, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because everybody's working from home, and from what we've heard in interviews that they've had, Caleb and Boggs, it's harder to work on some stuff and get it through. Specifically, like RRG updates, I believe Boggs said was a little harder to do. It's going to take a bit longer if they're working from home.
Yeah, I feel that's definitely understandable. I think maybe some of it might even boil down to the guys seeing potential situations arising or going on. This is a little bit foggy, and kind of going, okay, well, I'll address that with the guys later on the Zoom call, and then forgetting about it. Or, I think it's, obviously not having that immediacy where they can kind of just knock on the other one's door and go, what do you think about this? How do you feel that this interaction should happen? I could see that potentially, having been part of it, or just not having that physical distance leading to divide in terms of the understanding of how the cards should play out. I think the new, as you mentioned, getting a new RRG out is probably going to help eliminate a good source of all the kind of questions, or a good percentage of all the kind of questions you guys would be getting through the Marvel Champions Discord at the moment. And we can only hope that that's going to head out soon. So just to end off this little rules discussion on maybe a bit more of a lighter hearted note, and I'm going to dob myself in first. I'm just wanting to know, what are some of the more, I don't know, maybe bigger or more funnier rules misunderstanding that you've had players come to you with? For me personally, I think the first week of playing, I was playing attack and thwart events during the villain phase in response to things like Magic the Gathering, and that's not how it works. And the game is far, far, far too easy if that was a thing. So I'm kind of glad it doesn't work like that. Do you have any others that come to mind in regards to people misunderstanding rules?
Yeah, one for me was, and this was me who did it, so I'm outing myself here, was I didn't understand the War Machine ally, Tony's ally ability, Tony's ally's ally ability. I don't have it in front of me, but I think you deal him 2 damage, and you get to deal damage everywhere. So I didn't get that if you dealt him damage, or this ability that it would still trigger even if that defeated him, even if it defeated the ally, because you paid the cost thus you can still resolve the ability. I was kind of reading it more off a feeling that he would be defeated at that point and the ability wouldn't fire. And I missed the section in the rules about if you trigger the ability of a card that is in play and pay its cost, the ability will still resolve, even if that card leaves play. So that was a huge one for me, because I think we had like there was like 5 people, including Scott, was just trying to get it through my head that it still worked. And I just didn't understand it. And, and I think that's part of what makes the Discord channel, rules channel, a great place, is because even if you have like some odd idea of how something works, you could always go there, ask, or present your argument, and people will discuss it, and like adults, and try and talk you through it and understand what the differences are, what your arguments are. And yeah, luckily everybody came to my aid at that point, and I finally got it there, understood how it worked.
Yeah, I think a lot of those kind of things are possibly coming from people like me who don't have a lot of patience for reading lengthy rule books and just kind of want to jump in and learn the game as we go. I think for me, most of the questions I've thrown at you guys in the rules discussion section of the Discord has been stuff like I just have had a mental blank on and have forgotten that it's actually not really all that complicated stuff, like you defending with allies and getting a retaliate ping. I keep forgetting that doesn't work. And yeah, it just comes from that kind of short attention span in regards to rule books. So I love you guys for that. The fact that you guys are always there and very good with stuff, even if it's something I could Google or hit the RRG pretty quickly. I'm a bad one for that, like not Googling things I could.
So yeah, we try to be like very welcoming so that people don't feel embarrassed to ask questions, like any question. You just come there and ask, you'll be fine. Nobody's going to make fun of you for it. And if they do, I'll definitely have a word with them, because I personally don't like that. It's just a game. We're a community of people that love to play the game. We should be able to come together and ask a bunch of questions and figure it out together.
Yeah, and in regards to having that attitude, and also the difficulties in putting together a comprehensive rule set, it largely boils down to having people from different backgrounds, different levels of fluency in the particular language they might be playing in, and also the difference in level of background that they've got in card or board games. So the work you guys do is definitely very good. So we're going to leave the rules discussion there. I'm hoping you guys are going to stick around and join me for a game of what I'm calling Fantastic Four. I'm going to have both of you pitch me some ideas for the future of the Marvel Champions card game, or retroactively screw with the past and present. Cool, so we'll just jump into that now.
To be continued. Dun dun dun.